So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the presenter series, the HypnoExpo 2025 presenter series. We're getting all geared up for the conference, HypnoExpo 2025 in Orlando from May 16th to the 18th. It's going to be a lot of fun, and boy, I've got to tell you, being here in Orlando, Florida, it is getting lovelier and lovelier and lovelier every day. I come from the Chicago area originally. If any of you are up there where all that white stuff is on the ground, and hey, I love Chicago. I love Chicago, my dear Karen. But every once in a while, it's nice to get in the sunshine. So, hope you'll all come and join us.
I can hardly wait. Yes, we've had in 3 days we had 70 degrees, we had tornadoes, and then we had snow. That's spring in Chicago. And it's the snow is kind of gone now, but the cold is still with us. It still only gets to the 40s. So yes, I'll be delighted to be in Orlando. Thank you very much.
Let me just check before we do the introductions. Eric, my friend, is your partner here with us today?
I was
I
wondering,
I am representing Bruce tonight. He's actually on a cruise.
Oh, how lovely for him. How
no
Yes.
lovely.
ship to shore communication? What kind of cruise is he on?
Okay, well, then we are going to begin, and our first presenters in absentia will be Bruce Eimer, and Eric is going to represent him. But let me tell you just a little bit about Bruce. He's a board-certified licensed clinical psychologist. Wait. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
For a minute I thought I hadn't started recording. He's a board-certified licensed clinical psychologist who has been using clinical hypnosis to help patients control pain since 1986. He has a full-time hypnotherapy and psychotherapy practice in South Florida. Bruce has authored over 8 books on pain, psychotherapy, and hypnosis. Dr. Eimer regularly teaches workshops on pain control hypnosis to hypnotherapists, psychologists, psychotherapists, physicians, dentists, and nurses. So there is Bruce. And on your screen, you will see live in just a moment Eric Rosen, who is the other half of this dynamic duo. Dr. Rosen is a licensed psychologist, an adjunct professor with the Florida School of Professional Psychology at National Louis University, Tampa, and has a master's certification for teaching hypnotherapy through IACT and IMDHA. Dr. Rosen holds practice with Family Psychological Services of Palm Harbor and is an associate trainer with Dr. Patricia Scott's Up Hypnosis Institute. So we're really looking forward to what you have to share with us, Eric, on behalf of you and your partner. And welcome. It's good to have you here this evening.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So where shall we begin? Your program is on. We are now on the days immediately after. Let's see. It's a. I don't want to say this wrong, and I need to look really quickly. It's a 1 day course. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, right. And it's the day after the conference. It will be on Monday after the weekend of the conference. And why don't you just give us the headlines first and tell us what the program is, and we'll
Yeah, the
ask
title. The
questions.
title is so enticing. Hypnotherapy for improving your love life and your relationships. I can
Ah,
hardly wait.
all right.
Well, um, our relationships are so important to all of us. I mean, if you think about it, we are very social beings. In fact, a fancy word for it is called altricial. We're altricial beings, meaning that our humanity is wired to each other. And so we all come from families. We learn about relationships from growing up. And as we move into adulthood, we fashion more relationships, whether it's through friendships, whether it's through our love interests, and ultimately it's developing new bonds. So the purpose of this workshop is to learn about something called attachment. How do people attach? And then more importantly, what happens when attachments get fractured, when something happens in the relationship and people start to drift away from each other. And so Bruce and I, in coming together, we talked about how this whole notion of attachment, called attachment theory, how do we learn how to connect? And can we use hypnosis to repair connection so that we can find ways to connect with people that we want to get close to and who we are with and we want to get closer?
I like this. You describe relationships as a gauntlet of lust to disgust and back again, and the use of hypnosis to improve and create more fulfilling and satisfying relationships is in fact what this is about. I wonder if there's just a little more that you can tell us about that. I love the description.
Well, it's interesting. Our human connections, when we are creating that sense of safety with people, when we're building trust, when we see that person as somebody who is like our best friend, but we also have chemistry with them. And when we have those connections, then we feel fulfilled. But different things in our lives can interfere. They can interrupt with those things. And when that happens, I say it's a gauntlet because it can go from lust to, oh, I can't stand you, to disgust. And then we want to get back to the lust. I mean, we want to get back to wanting to be with somebody so we feel energized by them. And there are different things that can rupture relationships, that can affect our trust. And when that happens, hypnosis can be used to help repair attachment.
So
Well,
can you go, Eric, from disgust to love again? Can you bounce back?
I believe you can. I think some of it has to do with repairing what are called attachment bonds.
Tell me more about that.
Well, there was what you'll learn in the course is what attachment is. I'll give you a foreshadowing. There was a famous researcher, psychologist named John Bowlby, and then another person picked up after that called Mary Ainsworth. And what they did is they looked at the enduring bonds that infants have and how do they learn to be connected with a caregiver. And then they talked about, well, what happens to affect those relationships? Sometimes in our growing up, and what hypnosis does a marvelous job with is being able to repair some of the different scripts that we picked up growing up. And they call those ACEs. ACEs have to do with adverse childhood experiences, different things that affect our ability to feel safe and trust that the person we're with is going to be there for us. And so in that, there are different kinds of what are called attachment styles, different ways that we learn to be more secure. Well, it turns out, and this is fascinating, but many of you may have heard, like in a beginning hypnosis class, you may have studied about Spiegel and Spiegel. And they were the ones who came up with the famous definition of hypnosis as an aroused, attentive, focused concentration with a diminution of peripheral awareness. That basically they also got into the notion of using hypnosis because hypnosis is attachment repair work. And let me explain that. What that means is that when we're getting into our hypnotic work, we're building trust. We're also very focused on the individual. When we're using our hypnotic voice, which has a cadence to it, it can be very soft. It's very pleasant, and it almost creates connection, which is called hypnotic attunement. And so when we are helping people go into trance, what's happening is we're actually attaching with them, and we are repairing attachment because the ultimate part of the hypnotic relationship is helping people feel safe. Isn't it interesting when we do hypnotic trance work that the pre-talk that Michael was talking about before, it's basically to demystify hypnosis and build trust. And once people are able to go into trance, there's a process of trust that's already underway. And so, believe it or not, you are already repairing attachment. But this workshop helps to look at different strategies and techniques to help people in their relationships. And you can even do this with couples.
Nice. I just had a master trainer class over the last 5 days, by the way, and one of the things that we talked about at length was this idea of mutual trance and mutual hypnosis, and how it is that we sort of go there together. And as you're describing relationships, I'm thinking, well, isn't that an interesting way to think about it? We develop some trances are better than others. I will point out. But there is this way that we create that connection exactly that you're talking about, for good or for ill. And what an interesting thing and an interesting perspective.
And you brought up a marvelous idea, and I believe this, that when we're in relationships, it is a kind of trance. And so if you have a good trance, then you see your partner as somebody that is trustworthy, that is also a loyal friend, that you can connect not only emotionally and from your heart, but also you feel like they're part of your world. Mm-hmm. And then when you have things that affect that, like breaches in trust and so forth, or distance, then what happens is people start to go into a bad trance. And so it is possible to repair some of these trances in relationships.
Nice.
Is that the kind of thing that you teach to people? And I use that word teach, you share, you pass along, you give post-hypnotic suggestions to the people that you're working with. I mean, you'll be teaching in this workshop this to hypnotists, but is this also the kind of thing that you teach to clients that you have?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll give you an example. You can use some of these techniques both with couples and teaching them, but you can also work with somebody individually. For example, I worked with a fella who came in and wanted to get some help in dealing with feelings and so forth about their relationship. And what came out in the pre-talk was that they became very overly reactive. One of the problems we have in relationships that leads to arguing, and then also we stop listening. I think that's a kind of bad trance, is that we start to feel that someone's not hearing us. We start to feel that they're not with us. They're not caring for us. And so we start to go into defensive mode to get the other person to hear us. So what I did with him was actually make use of hypnotic techniques to help them to relax when they were hearing their partner. In other words, to focus more on the hearing than on the reacting. And sometimes people can say things that will hurt us. So what would happen if the next time that you're in that situation, it would be, and this person loved hockey, so I could use a metaphor. And imagine a plexiglass screen, and any of those verbal pucks just bounce right off. And you can continue to observe and feel and think and find your calmer self. And what was happening is this person then was able to hear their partner and not react to it. And it changed their dynamics. And they then came back after using these techniques and saying, we're not fighting as much anymore. I'm not really understanding why. And it's like, but I'm not reacting as much. I'm focusing more on thinking about them. Building empathy. So it becomes like a tool. So being able to self-regulate ourselves is a big part of helping people to connect.
So important in a loving, romantic, living together relationship. But oh my goodness, Eric, isn't this important for all of our relationships? I mean, siblings, you're going home for a family dinner. You got to know how to have that relationship going on to be able to do some of that you're talking about around the Thanksgiving table. or with your boss, or with a coworker, or with other students in class. Doesn't this have very far-reaching uses?
Well, since we attach on so many different levels, we have more intimate relationships we attach. But like you said, we have work relationships, we have work peers, we have people, if you're in a position as a manager, dealing with people that report to you or dealing with someone who's in a boss or management position. Being able to self-regulate is an important skill. We can use hypnosis to help someone to find their inner calm. It changes dynamics in how you relate to people.
If you're on the condo board, you can use this.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what I mean. Shouldn't everybody be using this and learn that self-regulation for all of their relationships? It's fabulous. It's fantastic.
Well, here's another thing. Spiegel and Spiegel, they came up and we'll be teaching some of this along with hands-on techniques for how do you actually use some of these skills with couples and with individuals. But actually, there's a process when someone goes into trance and they start to mentally create that inner world. It's actually called mentalization. And when we mentalize, what happens is we're opening up that inner world for people. Not everybody knows how to do that, but hypnosis can actually help people to get calm. So they start to represent the outer world inside. And that actually are the seeds for empathy, for being able to feel for somebody else. So that process then, whatever techniques you're using in hypnosis are actually helping people to develop that inner skill. You're actually helping people to have a richer inner life through the use of hypnosis.
So who particularly might this workshop be geared for? That is what, and not only that, what kind of hypnosis techniques will participants learn? You've pretty much answered that, but just a little more if you'd be so kind.
Well, if this can be useful when you're working with people, and let's say they come in, and if it's an individual and they would like to re-energize their relationships, and maybe if the issue of reactivity is there, then you can help them with the technique to learn how to find that inner calm, that place where they're in charge of their reactions aren't in charge of them. With couples, you can make use of hypnotic techniques. An example can be having two people go into a very comfortable trance while they're holding hands and looking into each other's eyes. That's a trance.
Right.
And being able to help two people to feel that sense of security. And it may be remembering times when they had it. In other words, for most of us, we're also going to talk about people move through different stages in relationships. But typically, in the early stages, we can remember those times, and they're very endearing. And reconstructing that feeling, the memory, the sensations, while you're holding your partner's hands and looking into their eyes, creates a trance.
Nice. And when you were talking about those first people, you started out with people who are not coupled, and how they might like to enhance, I don't know exactly what words you used, their current relationships. How about people that are sort of all alone and cut off and don't even have a good working theory about how to relate to others? Does this offer them something as well that can help them sort of go back out into the world and start to make connections where they hadn't done so before?
Well, now what comes to mind for me is helping people with their confidence to be able to, if people have had, and then the other part of this hypnosis helps with is suppose you've had some experience that have affected your confidence and being able to rediscover it so that you could take that with you into relationships. And again, our social confidence helps us to take the chances to build attachment. Because there are people that have fears of connecting again, especially after a loss or especially after a relationship may not work. And so it's being able to see that here's something that I think is that when people have a relationship that's not working, it affects how you feel about yourself. And that can create feelings of shame or feelings of inadequacy, particularly in breakups, even if someone makes the decision to break up. But sometimes it happens in reverse. And so how do you find a way to heal that part of yourself to feel you're still worthy and that you still are lovable? In other words, there's some very core parts of ourselves, talking about parts therapy, where you basically can strengthen some of those component parts to be able to take that with you and make attachment happen.
Yeah. And there's some people, I mean, you were talking about trauma from previous relationships, or they've had bad issues in the past. It does occur to me that there's some people who the only relationships that they've ever had were with their immediate family. And it's left them in such a condition that they're like, I don't know that I want to go out and recreate that, in the world with somebody else. So this would be useful for those people as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the beautiful part of hypnosis, we help people to write new scripts. So they learn how to think differently and how they want to think differently. And that's the beauty, that we help people become their own novelists for what do you want to create in your life. And with hypnosis, we can also then explore, where did it go off track? How can we get them back on track? How do we help them to create that loving feeling that they are worthy of being loved?
Nice.
So Eric, I know who you can help with this information, and I know the information you're going to farm out. I want to know who this workshop is for, and are there prerequisites? Does somebody have to be a hypnotist? Do they have to be in the licensed professions? Do they have to be a psychologist? Or who is this workshop for?
Well, I believe it's for certified hypnotists, hypnotherapists, and licensed people. Again, one of the things we'll also talk about is something I refer to as scope of practice. In other words, if you have more experience with couples work and therapy, then you would be incorporating this already into skill set that you have in doing therapy. If you're not a couples therapist, you could still make use of these techniques. Some of the scope of practice would be, I wouldn't take two people on and say, hey, I'm going to use hypnosis to cure your relationship. I mean, if they're basically, and I do work with couples and couple therapy, but I make use of hypnosis. But if I wouldn't use this technique and say, hey, taking this course, you'll be able to work with people on the verge of divorce and be able to bring them back from the edge. That would not fit what the purpose of the workshop would be.
Is there anything in the workshop, and I know it wasn't on your question, so I hope I'm not throwing you a curveball,
Yeah.
but is there anything for your workshop to work with people who are at a place in their relationship where maybe it's time to disconnect?
That's a good point. I think the process of relationships is sometimes they're not always working. And the question can be, can people kind of soften some of that hurt or some of that disappointment so you can get to a place where you can have a calm conversation? So being able to self-regulate can be something that you can do with hypnosis. This is an interesting fact, but when your heartbeat starts to get above 90, 100, and you're starting to get really intensely upset with somebody, then what's happening, there are actually neurological changes in your brain. What happens is your lizard brain comes on board, which is your limbic system, and your frontal cortex, the part where you think, it's like a dimmer switch. It gets turned down. So when you're able to start to feel that intensity and take yourself to a lower level, then what happens is you can hear better. And so if people are in a place where the relationship maybe is not working as well, and they want to get to a place where they can be able to hear each other better and maybe be able to talk about some tough subjects, then this may help with the regulation. This could be marketed if you're a hypnotist or hypnotherapist. You could market this to couples therapists, saying that you could be a help to help people to self-regulate better, to be able to find an inner calm, so they could take that back to their couples therapy.
Isn't that interesting that you're marketing to people in therapy, how they can help their therapist help them?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting turn of events. So walk me through a typical, what are you going to do during the day? You're going to teach some techniques, you're going to teach some theory. Walk me through that day in the last minute we have.
Yeah, I would say that there's going to be opportunity for learning about these things, and then also some very hands-on techniques where you get to practice any of the skill sets that we're going to be bringing up. So people will end up with an understanding and then a practical ability to use it, but also to understand where you don't use it. So I always like to bring in that scope of practice, because that protects us in terms of liability, and it also helps because then we're not advertising something we can't provide. It's really creating well-formed outcomes. That's what we're really talking about.
Nice.
Okay, so we know how well that you will do. What's this Bruce Eimer guy going to bring to the mix?
Well, Bruce is incredibly dynamic and enthusiastic. And he also has a host of different techniques that he's been doing for years with couples. So he brings a wealth of hands-on technique that I think it'll be exciting to experience.
I was teasing Bruce, of course. I think it will be a very dynamic duo, and it'll be a wonderful post-conference event.
It is going to be absolutely wonderful. I'm excited about it, and I really appreciate what you've shared with us, Eric. I also, before we let you go, because it's just about time now for us to switch already, how time flies, but I do want to mention that Eric, just for the benefit of everybody listening and watching, is also going to be presenting a pre-conference workshop with Patricia Scott, pardon me, on medical hypnosis. And also on Friday afternoon, a 1 hour lecture on trauma-informed clinical hypnotherapy. I've heard him on this topic before, by the way, and it's really wonderful. So do be sure, if you're here for the conference, that you get some Eric Rosen time, because you're going to learn some great stuff from him.
Yeah. Eric, thank you very much for joining us. Looking forward to seeing you in Orlando.
Oh, thank you. Same here.
So, is there something else you want to add, Michael, or should we move forward?
I was just going to say, hey, Karen, what are we going to do?
Let's move ahead. I'm really excited about this one. Lori Donnelly is our next guest, and she's doing the post-conference. Oh, let me make sure I have the title correct, Lori. I do not. I'm going to ask you to give me the title in a moment. I know what I want to ask about it and what I want to know about it. But here's what you want to know about Lori. Lori is a certified hypnotherapist, a clinical hypnotherapist, a certified brain health coach with the Amen Clinics, IEMT, Integral Eye Movement Technique. She's a trainer, practitioner, advanced NLP practitioner, master therapeutic, imaginary facilitator. Oh my gosh, the list goes on and on. Lori, I don't want to cut into your time here to tell us all about this with your credentials. Just know she is, well, she's a learned woman who's going to pass along some stuff, and one of my favorite topics. If you know anything about psychologists, some of those snooty psychologists say, we lay hypnotists can't be trusted with something like EMDR because you need special equipment and special training for it. And oh my gosh, we can't even train it to people unless they're of the licensed profession. And here comes Lori saying, we're going to train you something. Here's what you can do, IEMT. Lori, tell me all about IEMT and what that is and how we're going to be able to use it.
All right. Is my mic good?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. It was being naughty earlier. So I posted something in the chat for you guys to play with if you when we work a little bit later here. But yeah, IEMT, integral eye movement technique. This was developed by Andrew T. Austin over in the UK, and he's a nice English fellow who goes down a rabbit hole on absolutely everything. And, you know, a little nod to the NLP, a little nod to provocative change work, a nod to a lot of different things that he brought in to creating this incredible modality that does create change in the blink of an eye. And that's just the party trick, so to speak, but it's so much more. And as far as what you were talking about with EMDR, if you go onto a Reddit loop and type in EMDR, you will see people talking about how traumatic it is, how, oh my gosh, I'm on my 10th session and I feel like I need to curl up in bed for a month. A little bit like brain spotting, you'll hear the same thing. And yes, you do have to be a licensed therapist to do and, you know, to advertise. I'll say advertise because I know some people who play with some EMDR and, you know, to be able to advertise that you do EMDR. The funny thing is that IEMT and EMDR are only like each other in one aspect, that the eyes move. IEMT has a bigger protocol than that. And EMDR tends to, if you ask anyone that's had EMDR, it's mostly bilateral stimulation. They've added much more now. They've got lights and even tapping. And if you look at tapping, by the way, if you're tapping, just going to notice that the eyes and the attention, not just the eyes, will tend to go to the places you are tapping. IEMT not only works with the eyes, we actually work with where your attention goes. And you can do this without eye movements as well. So it's really interesting. But the eye movements, again, are the really fast within 40 seconds of your clients coming in, sitting down in front of you with a problem. You can literally have change in the blink of an eye. And EMDR tends to be a little more re-traumatizing. IEMT, not so much. We're not delving into the problems that EMDR does.
So what are the core principles of IEMT?
So the core principles are, we are dealing with the 5 patterns of chronicity. We're dealing with emotional imprinting, identity imprinting. We're dealing with the PTSD linchpin. IEMT has an incredible PTSD model that works wonders on people that have big traumatic PTSD events. And it works on the PSACs physically. How are you physically doing the problem? We actually teach our clients how to get out of a physical state that they are in. So you might hear some things in there from some NLP stuff and go, yeah, that sounds like what they do, but it's so much more, I guess, finessey is the only word I have for it. It's so much quicker and more finessey.
So, Lori, let me ask you a question. Back in the olden days, 20 years ago, when I first started in hypnosis, I was introduced to, they were called Pathfinder glasses. That was probably the trade name, glasses with flashy lights, right? And ostensibly, it was the flashing of the lights and the movement, the eye movement, that brought on the trance. Does that in any way at all relate to what
IEMT.
IEMT, yes, that. that.
So in IEMT, we have interesting thing, which yes, eye movement. So if those of you who are hypnotists, you are doing eye fascination with IEMT. So if somebody comes in, they have a negative memory, negative feelings, and we do the IEMT around those right in the beginning, they are experiencing eye fascination and they do go into trance long before you put them in that chair. They are already going in. And with IEMT, going back to those core concepts, the 5 patterns of chronicity, one of those patterns is one of the things that people experience when they come to a hypnotist is that they have failed at a lot of other things. And this is where we address that. But how many of you have clients that have come to you and said, my doctor, my psychiatrist said, maybe I should see a hypnotist for that? Because they failed at therapy in many other ways. And IEMT, we address that within the first 30 seconds of your client sitting down in front of you. So once they learn immediately that something can change in the blink of an eye, and they can feel differently and have a different emotional imprint, and visually in their mind, they don't see the memory the same way. By the time you put them in hypnosis, they have come to believe that your hypnotic work is going to help them. They come to believe that this is different. So it's an amazing modality to put in the front of any hypnosis session.
Nice. How is IEMT and EMDR similar or different from each other, or is there a relationship at all?
Yeah, the only way they're the same is that the eyes are moving. And with IEMT, we are noticing those eye movements. We're looking for deviations. When there's an eye deviation, meaning that the eye has a little blip, there's a repositional change of how they are seeing the problem. And I'd love to give you guys a demo if
Oh,
everybody
wow.
would like to do a demo here today.
Please.
By all means.
Okay. So one of the things we do with IEMT is we do the before we get started exercise. And the before we get started exercise literally will get your client to come in. They don't tell us anything. You've got their intake form, you've got some information, but we're going to work on something, not why they're here today. So I'm going to ask you guys to not pick the worst thing that ever happened to you. You're going to pick a negative memory that from 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, you would say it's about a 7. It has an emotional imprint and it is vivid in your mind. And I'm going to ask you some questions, and I did put this in the chat already if you guys wanted to pop that out and have it on your thing so you can follow along if you like, or you can just sit back and enjoy this process because we are going to. Does anyone in here have any eye injuries today? Anyone in here is psychotic? There's a few contraindications. We want to make sure that you guys are all safe. Yes, Michael.
You're muted, Michael.
Sorry. I had my hand up not because I'm psychotic, um,
Oh, okay.
because I usually don't acknowledge that until at least the second lecture. But but I have glaucoma and I'm almost blind in my left eye, and sometimes processes that kind of require eyedness. Oh, is that the word? You know,
Iceness. Yeah.
is
You
there
know
any
what?
indication?
I don't think that glaucoma is a contraindication, but I mean, you move your eyes all day, every day. Do you have a problem moving your eyes? Do you have any discomfort moving your eyes?
I do have problems. My
Okay.
left eye has a life of its own. It moves where it wants to, when it wants to.
Oh, I believe that it will be okay in this case, as long as there's nothing wrong with the nerves and the muscles going into the eye, like damage. So like a detached retina, anything like that, psychosis, anything like that. Okay. We're good. Okay. Neurological issues, severe neurological issues. I'm prepared to work with them. I know how to work with them. So I can. And I think that somebody or Eric mentioned earlier, we stay within scope of what we work with, right? So you want to make sure from the contraindications that you stay within scope of what you're going to work with. So what I want all of you to do is that the setup on this is the eyes. So on Zoom, in person, it's a whole different thing. We're just going to have them follow our fingers. But on Zoom, we're actually going to have them keep their head completely still. And we're going to have them look into their eyes as if they're looking into their ears. So this is like as far as you can to the peripheries, as if you're looking into your ears. Okay, so if you guys want to give that a little test there. And then the other one you're going to do is you're going to look up into your eyebrow on one side and then down to the opposite shoulder. I do not know left and right. So you guys can figure that out or set that up with your clients ahead of time on Zoom. I just go up here and they start, and then I go down here. So again, the idea is as far as we can to the peripheries, and then we're going to switch. We're going to go up here and down here. So you will be following my voice more than you're going to follow my fingers. So just understand that on Zoom, that's how we set it up. Okay. All right. So I want everyone to come up with a negative memory, again, from 1 to 10, 10 being the worst. You don't want it to be the worst thing that ever happened. From, we want it to be about a 7. And when you think of this memory in your mind, it's vivid in nature and has that emotional component around a 7. All right. So I'm going to ask you a set of questions, and I want you to really notice how you're doing this memory, this negative memory. So the first question would be, is this memory in your mind? And those NLPers are going to know some of these submodalities. Those in this memory, is it vivid in your mind? Foggy? Notice what it looks like. You can close your eyes if you need to connect to it. And when you're thinking of this memory now, is it full color, black and white, somewhere in between? Just notice it. And in thinking about that memory now, is it a movie or a still or somewhere in between? Sometimes it's slideshowy. Okay. And in thinking about that memory now, are you in it, associated, or are you watching yourself outside of it? And thinking about that memory now, in time and space, compared to when it actually happened, does it feel closer than it should? Or does it feel appropriate or somewhere in between? So I really want you to notice everything you notice about that memory. And from 1 to 10, I want you to rate it, 10 being the worst. From 1 to 10, give it a rating. Now, those of you who have your eyes closed, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes and you're going to focus in on me in the middle. You can pin me if it makes it easier for you guys that are watching. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ear to ear as far as we can in each direction. So I want you to hold on to that memory, keep holding on to that memory, keep holding on to that memory, moving your eyes ear to ear as far as you can. Do not move your heads. Hold on to that memory. Keep holding on to that memory. Just keep holding on to that memory. Just keep holding on to that memory. And we're going to pop up to this eyebrow, whichever one that is for you guys, and down to the shoulder, all the way up, all the way down as far as you can, all the way up. Holding on to that memory. Don't let it go. Keep holding on to that memory. Just keep holding on to that memory. Beautiful. Just keep holding on to that memory. Just keep holding on to that memory and up to the other side and down and up and down, holding on to that memory. Just keep holding on to that memory. Don't let it go. Keep holding on to that memory. Just keep holding on to that memory and take a big deep breath for me and just blow out that memory. Okay, so what I want all of you to do now is I want you to kind of close your eyes and access that memory again. What do you notice about the memory now? Anyone want to share? Patricia.
Interestingly, it got like pixelated.
That's something that can happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Anyone else have something they noticed about their memory?
I felt
mine. Sorry.
Laura.
I felt my memory kind of like dissolving, which was excellent because I picked something that was extremely painful for me, and it's just been like a knife in my side.
And we got some metaphors there.
Yeah, like no, so I was really excited that it felt like it deflated it. It felt like it took the intensity out of it, like the pain and the hurt. Like
yeah.
I'm still like, I'm sure I could still attach to it if I wanted to, but I want to actually reinforce the letting go and releasing it.
Okay, so I'm going to go back over those little submodalities for you guys again. So if you think about this memory now, is it still the same full color that it was before? Is it as vivid, full color? Notice what you notice about the memory now. If it was a movie before, has it slowed down or is it a still now? And if you were in it before, are you now watching it? Dissociated from it? And if it was time and space, how far away does it feel now? Does it feel like almost where it should be or somewhere a little bit further away? These are precise calculations we are working with our clients. Most of our clients do not know their own experience. This particular technique gets them to understand and know their own experience right in the beginning. From 1 to 10, where would you rate that memory now? So did anybody have the memory go up higher to a bigger number? Did anyone have the memory significantly go down to like a 3 or less? Did anyone have the memory that went down maybe 1 notch or 2? 1 or 2. Okay, so let's see, Michael, what was yours before?
You're muted, Michael.
I know. I keep doing that. It was a 7 or so, and like about a 5 or maybe a 4 when we were done.
Okay, so Michael just did one of the patterns of chronicity, the maybe a man. It was a 7 or so, and maybe it's a 5 or something. So when we're working with our clients, we are going to get them to be specific. Is it a 7? Is it a 5? A 7 feels different than a 5. They feel drastically different. A 10 feels different than a 5. By the way, going back to EMDR, most people, or the people that I quizzle about that have had EMDR that come to see me, I have them go back and look at that memory, and I say to them, I go, is that memory from 1 to 10? Where would you rate it? And they all usually say about a 5. They can't see it like you just did these memories. And they hit it at a 5. I go, great. Hold on to everything you remember about that memory. And we go one more time. And by the time we're done, that memory is down to a 0, 2, or 0. There's a 20-minute drop time. So wherever you guys are right now, it will continue to go down. However, the caveat is, this is if it's a negative memory that is not preloaded with an emotional problem. So let's say Michael's memory, we do it one more time, and his would probably go down because he's already sort of at a 5, sort of, kind of. By the way, I'm a board certified clinical hypnotherapist because of Michael. Thank you very much. If you guys take that class, it was an amazing class. I didn't put that in my dossier. So we work with not only the negative memory. Let's say that we were working with a negative feeling that was a problem or stuck. If there's a feeling that's stuck, we would take that feeling and we would rate that feeling, and we would ask them, when is the first time they remember feeling this way? And then we would move the ice while they located that first time. And I did have somebody in the chat. Laura says she ended up with a massive headache after doing the exercise. Is that normal? Yeah, we could, Laura. So that would be one of our other patterns of chronicity. It would be an abreaction. So we would do, if you have do you have the headache now? Or is it a little better? It's still there. Okay, so would you guys like to see what we do with somebody that has a headache? I mean, we may not get all the answers that we need today, but this is what we do. Occasionally, somebody picks something big, and you heard her. She says, I picked something really big. It already feels faded and da-da-da. But now she's having a headache. So we're going to, let's just play with that for just a second. So Laura, the memory that you have, how vivid is that memory now?
It's drastically less, and that's what I noticed during the exercise. Is for me, I don't know why, it was extremely painful.
Okay, so it's less now?
It's definitely less now.
Okay,
I was just curious about
where would you rate it right now?
the memory.
Yeah, from 1 to 10.
Probably like a 2 or a 3. Like I really want to let it go.
Okay, so I'd love to be specific. A 2 or a 3?
2.5.
Okay, 2.5. So technically it should continue to go on its own. But the massive headache could be an abreaction that is stopping the process from going. So with her, if I have a client that I'm working and they're going, yeah, it's giving me a headache. That's right, just keep going. We don't stop what we're doing when we're moving the eyes. We literally want them to trip that threshold of what's stopping the thing. And that would be part of the patterns of chronicity there. It is something inside. I've had clients shake, violently shake, tears, cry, and we just keep going. Yeah, that's okay. Keep going. So for her, we probably stopped just short of crossing a little threshold. So I'm just going to do, if anybody else is still at anything at a 3 or a 5 or a 5 or whatever, we're going to do it one more time. Okay. And we'll see where we end up from there. All right. So everybody, I want you guys to go back. If anyone that's not a 3 or less, go back to your memory. Notice everything you notice about that memory. You know what we're looking for. How does it look to you? What's it like? How are you experiencing it? Okay. All right. So Laura, I'm going to have you specifically. I want you to move your eyes as far as you can into the peripheries, as far as you can. Do not move your head. Do not move your head. There you go. Keep going. Just keep going. Do not move your head. Do not move your head. Keep going. Hold on to that memory. Hold on to that memory. Keep holding on to that memory. Do not move your head. Keep holding on to that memory. And let's pop up to this eyebrow way up here, up high as you can up here, and then down to the shoulder as low as you can, up and down, holding on to that memory. Don't let it go. Don't let it go. Keep holding on to that memory. Beautiful. Just keep holding on to that memory. And up to the other side, as high as you can, and down, and as high as you can, and down, holding on to that memory. Keep holding on to that memory. Keep holding on to that memory, and take a deep breath. So some of the things people can say is they felt dizzy, or they've got a little bit of a headache, or those things. Those are rare. However, the people that have physiological ab reactions are the ones who have the biggest breakthroughs. They're the ones who show up to my classes going, what the hell did you just do to me? That's amazing. I just let go of something that has been torturing me my whole life. So just we deal with the negative memories. We deal with the negative feelings around memories. We deal with negative identities. How did the person learn to be who they are? And if we were thinking about Eric's thing earlier that he had, he and I are doing the same time, but we could work together because this particular modality deals with how you see other people. And like in a few seconds, you could not be angry at that grandma who said that nasty thing to you 30 years ago. So we deal with identities of self and other people as well. So we'll come back to you, Laura, in a second. So, and all right. So any more questions for now?
I do have a question. My question is, I heard you masterfully move from a visual submodality to a kinesthetic submodality. How do you deal with auditory?
Okay, so occasionally when, so eye accessing cues, right? We're actually looking for 3D eye accessing cues in IEMT, not 2D. So it's not just ear to ear. We're actually looking for the spaces in between. So the visual fields are much broader. There's a space from here to here, from here to here, from here to here. And we're noticing those eye movements. I only ask if I know that there was some sort of loud type thing, if the person hears somebody in their statements, if they say, yeah, I can hear them telling me this story. We tend not to get a lot of content, which allows the therapist not to cave into the client's story. We stop that right in the beginning. But occasionally you'll see them look to their ear or their left ear for the memory. So as we start doing this, we start noticing where they're accessing the memory, and we would start there.
And I asked because mine was an auditory memory. So there was nothing in the language that had me moving that. I do NLP, so I can do that myself. But I'm just asking, in the training, is there something that deals with that as well?
It deals with it on its own. So when you think of that memory now, Karen, is it still auditory in your mind? Can you hear anything now?
Yeah.
You can still hear it. So we would work on that aspect again. What you hear in it. Is it as loud? Is it as vivid?
Okay, that answered my question. How do you move over to those submodalities? That was
we would simply have you look at the memory again. We'd have you rate it. And this time you could say, yeah, I'm hearing that there is an audio. So when we're working one-on-one, I might have noticed your eyes look for the memory in your ear. And I would have said, can you hear something, Karen, in this memory? And you just said, yeah. And then we would just do it one more time with you holding on to that part. So you can, because sometimes memories are more complex, but there's pieces and parts there. So for you, you can actually go home and do this yourself. You can think of what you're hearing.
I already did it.
Oh,
I already do it in this exercise.
I was just NLP-ish, yeah. But that's what it does. It literally will take. So if you did have an auditory, and a lot of times that will come up in the conversation, or I'm going to see it in the eyes. I'm looking at the whole screen, so I couldn't see everybody where their eyes were going. So we just did the generic practice. Yeah. But yeah, we're looking at the eyes. We're looking for where they're accessing the memories. If you were accessing the memories predominantly up here, we would start up here. A lot of times down in the lower areas where we've got self-talk and emotions, I might start down here. And there are some more advanced eye movements that we do in the training, but that's the test exercise. So if everyone here had a representative, I can't say it tonight, representational change in the way they saw that memory, then I think we could do something here with that big thing that you've got a problem with.
Nice. Yeah, I'd like to take a moment of your time just to acknowledge for everybody that, Lori obviously has particular expertise in this area. And the thing that I know that some of you may know or some of you may not know is she mentioned Andy Austin, her teacher that she got this from. Andy Austin also did a bunch of work with the Andreases, teachers of mine. And I remember when it was Andrew that introduced to us and to the whole community this notion of bilateral stimulation that so many people in this group, anybody that's ever been associated with me has seen me talk about. and Melissa Tears and various other people. So you got this really from the source, and I want to get clear about that because Andy, for all the simple version, Andy is in the UK. He was a psychiatric nurse, if my memory serves me correctly, when he came into this work. He's also contributed to Metaphors of Movement. For those of you who know about that work, so you've had a great teacher, Lori, and something that just makes me know right off the bat that you are the real deal and you've got some really good stuff to bring.
We also just completed the complex war trauma project where we're working with amputees using IEMT for people that have had, I mean, some of the worst things that have happened to people. Yeah, but he did discover this. Basically, he was in an EMDR clinic and he was watching. Andy goes down rabbit holes and he's like, how come 10 people can go to EMDR and 9 of them, or I think the percentage is about 70%, have really pretty good outcomes. Honestly, if it goes from a 10 to a 5, that's a great outcome for somebody who's suffering, right, with real PTSD. So he would say, well, how come some people got to come in 10 times to these sessions? Because they set them up as 10, 12 sessions in therapy. By the way, insurance paying for that. And he says, how come some people are here for that many and other people come in and have 1 or 2 sessions or even 1 session and have really great results? And he had a client, he was sitting in on a session. He was watching this woman who was, I think, about her 10th session. And she's just going back and forth, 30 minutes in, but he kept noticing a little blip in her eyes. And he goes, I noticed when you're going, what do you do? You keep looking up. She goes, yeah, I keep thinking of something else. So he took the light bars and he stacked them on a stack of books and he angled them. And she did 2 passes. Boom. She says, what did you just do to me? Gone. Gone. And that is the experience that I've had. And that is why I'm going to do a real quick story is why I'm doing this. When I was doing my case studies, I had a fellow hypnotist come to me for a case study. He was a retired police officer. He retired because he got stabbed in a knife fight in the park. And he was airlifted out. For 7 years, this grown man policeman was literally like attached to the helicopters. Every time he'd see one, he had true trauma PTSD. He literally was in that helicopter every single time. This is like the Vietnam vet type PTSD you hear about. And he came in and, I'm like, okay, what's standing out to you in this piece? This was in the first 30 seconds. And, I just went for it. Right. And I'm just like, okay, hold on to that piece that's standing out to you. Hold on to that piece that's standing out to you. And 40 seconds done. And he's bawling. And I'm just like going. And he's bawling, tears, snotty. And he hits the table. And he goes, what the fuck did you just do to me? Mm-hmm. And he's crying. And I'm thinking I broke this grown man. And he goes, I've been in therapy for 7 years. 7 years. And you just did in 40 seconds what I've been suffering with for the last 7 years. That was a game changer for me because I was just practicing. I felt awkward. I didn't know the movements. And I go, this is something really powerful. And he's not the only one. And by the way, he bought me a $500 Wagyu dinner in Vegas when we finally met in person. So it's an incredible modality. And I add it to all of my hypnosis and it just lightens the load before you do any hypnosis. It just takes the edge off of everything. It's unbelievable.
Plus, what great energy to be around. That's going to be on the Monday after the conference. Lori Donnelly, IEMT specialty training. What a cool thing, Lori. Can't wait to meet you physically in person in Orlando.
And Lori, I'd just like to add for anybody who, if for some reason you're going to be at the conference and you're not able to be in Lori's workshop, the good news is at least you won't want to miss her 1 hour introduction that she's doing on Saturday afternoon as well, from 4 to 4:45 or to the end of the training day. So watch for her there with the sunlight in her hair because it is going to be wonderful in Orlando. And we're looking forward to all of you joining us there. Thank you for being with us tonight, Lori and Eric and all of you all, as they say here in Florida. And we hope to see you at the HypnoExpo coming just around the corner.
Hey,
Good night, everyone.
good night.
Good night, Michael.
Gloria a message in case she has a chance to get that.
Okay, John.